my wife texted. I'm pregnant, and it's for Jamie, my ex. I'm keeping the baby, but I'm putting my ex's name on the birth certificate. It's easier. I replied, okay. Then I canceled the lease on our apartment, forwarded her text to her ex, and sent him a congratulations on fatherhood gift basket. The call I got from his furious wife. Look, I'm not saying I expected my marriage to implode in a hospital waiting room that smelled like industrial-strength Lysol and broken dreams, but here we are. Life's funny like that. One minute you're scrolling through memes about how hospital coffee tastes like someone filtered it through a gym sock, and the next minute your wife is texting you the kind of message that makes you question whether you've been living in a simulation this whole time. Let me set the scene for you. It was a Tuesday afternoon, which already should have been a red flag because nothing good ever happens on a Tuesday. Mondays get all the hate, but Tuesdays? Those are the days that sneak up on you like a plot twist in a bad soap opera. I was sitting in one of those uncomfortable waiting room chairs that are specifically designed to make you regret every life choice that led you to that moment. You know the ones, covered in some kind of vinyl material that squeaks every time you shift your weight, positioned at an angle that guarantees lower back pain within 15 minutes. Sabrina, my wife of 3 years, was in the examination room getting what I thought was a routine checkup. We'd been trying to be healthier lately. Well, she had been trying, and I had been nodding along while secretly eating gas station burritos in my car during lunch breaks. I figured this was just another one of those preventative care appointments that insurance companies pretend to care about so they can justify their existence. The waiting room had that special kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look like they're auditioning for a zombie movie. There was an elderly couple in the corner, holding hands and whispering to each other in that sweet way that makes you think marriage might actually work out for some people. There was a mom with 2 kids who were currently engaged in what appeared to be a competition to see who could climb the highest on the magazine rack before security intervened. And then there was me, a 31-year-old guy in a wrinkled button-down shirt, mindlessly scrolling through my phone because that's what we do now instead of dealing with reality. I had just saved a particularly good meme about how hospital waiting rooms are where time goes to die when my phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina, which was weird, considering she was literally 10 feet away behind a door with one of those frosted glass windows. I could see her silhouette. She was sitting on the examination table, phone in hand, not looking particularly distressed or concerned or anything that would indicate the bomb she was about to drop on my entire existence. The message popped up on my screen, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I had to read it 3 times before my brain would even process what my eyes were seeing. I'm pregnant. It's for Jamie, my ex. I'm keeping the baby, but I'm putting his name on the birth certificate. It's easier. I'm talking about the kind of reading where you look at each word individually, like you're trying to decode an ancient language or figure out IKEA instructions written in Latin by someone who clearly hated humanity. I'm pregnant. Okay, that's a sentence I can understand. It's for Jamie. Wait, what? My ex. Hold up. I'm keeping the baby. Sure, that's a choice. But I'm putting his name on the birth certificate. Excuse me? It's easier. Easier than what, exactly? My thumbs hovered over the keyboard like they were waiting for my brain to catch up and provide some kind of coherent response. Should I text back, WTF? Should I write an essay about how this violated approximately 17 different levels of trust and common sense? Should I just throw my phone across the room and run screaming into the parking lot like a person who'd finally snapped after years of pretending everything was fine? Instead, I typed the only word my short-circuiting brain could manage. Okay. Just okay. Not, okay, we need to talk. Not, okay, I have questions. Not even, okay, I'm filing for divorce and possibly reporting insurance fraud to the authorities. Just, okay. Like she'd asked me to pick up milk on the way home or reminded me that we had dinner plans with her parents this weekend. I hit send and immediately looked up through that frosted glass window. Sabrina must have been watching for my response because she looked right at me, and I swear to God, she smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not an apologetic, I know this is crazy but hear me out smile. No, this woman smiled like she'd just successfully coordinated a surprise party or remembered to use a coupon at the grocery store. And then, and this is the part that really sealed the deal on my decision to question everything I thought I knew about reality, she gave me a thumbs up. A thumbs up, like we'd just agreed on where to order takeout from. Like she hadn't just casually mentioned that she was pregnant with someone else's baby and planning to commit what I was pretty sure was some form of fraud. A cheerful, enthusiastic, great job team kind of thumbs up that you'd give to someone who just finished a presentation at work or parallel parked on the first try. The elderly couple was still holding hands. The kids were now trying to build a fort out of the magazines. The fluorescent lights continued to buzz overhead like they were in on the joke. And I was sitting there, phone in hand, staring at my wife's thumbs up through the frosted glass, trying to understand how my Tuesday afternoon had turned into an episode of a reality show I never auditioned for. That's when it hit me, two undeniable truths that crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. First, betrayal actually hurts. Not in the dramatic, clutching your chest and falling to your knees way they show in movies, but in this weird, hollow, did that actually just happen kind of way that makes you feel like you're watching your life from outside your body. And second, more importantly, my wife might actually be an alien. Because no human being with a normal understanding of social contracts and basic relationship dynamics would text their husband about being pregnant with an ex's baby and then smile and give a thumbs up like everything was totally cool and normal. I looked back down at my phone. The meme about hospital coffee was still there, frozen on my screen above Sabrina's text. Somehow, the coffee joke didn't seem so funny anymore. Here's something they don't tell you about marriage when you're standing at the altar promising to love each other through sickness and health and all that other stuff you don't really think about until you're knee-deep in it. After enough years together, you develop exactly two operating modes. There's love mode, which is what you signed up for, the romance, the partnership, the whole we're in this together vibe that makes you think humans might actually be capable of not screwing everything up. And then there's logistics mode, which is what kicks in when you need to figure out whose turn it is to take out the trash, who's picking up the dry cleaning, and apparently, who's going to handle the fallout when your spouse decides to commit what might be several different types of fraud. Since Love had clearly left the chat, probably around the same time Sabrina hit send on that text message, I did what any reasonable person would do in this situation. I switched to logistics mode so hard you could practically hear the gears grinding in my head. No crying, no dramatic confrontations in the hospital parking lot, no throwing things or making a scene that would end up on someone's TikTok. Just pure, cold, calculated problem solving. Think of it like when your computer crashes and you have to restart in safe mode. Except instead of Windows, it's my entire marriage. And instead of trying to recover files, I'm trying to figure out how to extract myself from this disaster with my sanity and bank account relatively intact. The first call I made was to Liam, my best friend since college, and the only person I know who managed to make being a paralegal sound like the most exciting job in the world. Liam's the kind of guy who reads legal briefs for fun and gets genuinely excited about precedent-setting court cases. He's also the kind of friend who won't judge you when you call him at 3 in the afternoon with increasingly unhinged hypothetical questions. "Hey man," I said, trying to keep my voice casual like I was asking about his opinion on which pizza place delivered faster. "Quick question. Hypothetically speaking, and I really want to emphasize the hypothetical part here. If someone were to put another man's name on a birth certificate while they're still legally married to someone else, that would be fraud, right? Like actual legal fraud that could get someone in trouble." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could practically hear Liam's lawyer brain spinning up like a computer processing a complex equation. "Oh, absolutely," he finally said, and I could hear the curiosity creeping into his voice. "That's paternity fraud, potentially insurance fraud depending on the circumstances, possibly identity theft if they're forging documents. We're talking multiple felonies here. Why do you ask?" "No reason," I said, way too quickly to be believable. "Just, curious. Totally hypothetical. Just one of those random thoughts you have sometimes. Like, what if I could breathe underwater? Or what if my wife tried to put her ex-boyfriend's name on a birth certificate for insurance purposes?" "Miles, what the hell is going on?" "Nothing. Everything's great. Super hypothetical. Thanks for the info, buddy. You're the best. Let's grab beers soon and definitely not talk about this." I hung up before he could ask any more questions, which I'm sure only made him more convinced that something was deeply wrong. But hey, I'd gotten the information I needed, and that's what mattered. Next on my logistics checklist was the apartment situation. See, Sabrina and I had been renting this place for 2 years from Mrs. Patel. a 70-something Indian woman who owned half the buildings in our neighborhood and had somehow perfected the art of being everyone's surrogate grandmother while also being a ruthless landlord who would absolutely evict you if you were late on rent twice. She had a thing for scented candles, like an obsessive thing where the hallways always smelled like a combination of vanilla chai and autumn harvest, whatever that meant. And she loved drama almost as much as she loved her collection of Precious Moments figurines. Mrs. Patel, hi, it's Miles from 3B, I said when she picked up. Quick question about our lease. We're month to month now, right? I'd like to give notice. End of the month works for me. There was a concerned intake of breath on the other end. Beta, is everything okay? You and Sabrina are such a nice couple. Is the apartment okay? Is it the water pressure? I told the super to fix that. The apartment's perfect, Mrs. Patel. Really, it's just, life changes. My wife's trying to outsource fatherhood to her ex-boyfriend and commit what my paralegal friend tells me is multiple types of fraud, so we're simplifying our living situation. Nothing personal. Dead silence. Then, I'll have the paperwork ready by Friday. Beta, you call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I'll bring you samosas. God, I love that woman. With the practical stuff handled, I moved on to what I like to call the petty but justified phase of my logistics plan. I pulled up Facebook, which I rarely used except for remembering people's birthdays and seeing what my high school classmates were doing with their lives, and I searched for Jamie Thornton, Sabrina's ex. The guy who apparently had such good insurance that my wife was willing to blow up our marriage just to get access to it. It didn't take long to find him. His profile picture was him and some woman, his wife, I assumed, on a beach somewhere, both of them smiling like they'd just won the lottery and discovered that taxes didn't exist. His feed was full of the kind of posts that make you understand why people hate social media. Vacation photos, humble brags about work achievements, pictures of artisanal coffee drinks, and approximately 17 photos of them at what appeared to be various charity galas. They looked happy, successful, like people who had their lives together and definitely didn't expect to get a text message about surprise fatherhood. The woman in his photos, I scrolled until I found her tag name, Camille Brooks, had her own impressive profile. Attorney at some big firm downtown, based on her bio. She had that whole, I bill at $400 an hour, and I'm worth every penny, energy that you can somehow sense even through a screen. Perfect. I took a screenshot of Sabrina's text message. The whole thing, thumbs up energy and all. Then I crafted what I considered to be a masterpiece of passive-aggressive communication and sent it to Jamie in a Facebook message. Hey Jamie, congrats man. Sabrina wanted me to let you know you're going to be a dad. She says putting your name on the birth certificate is easier. Hope that works with your insurance plan. Best wishes. But I wasn't done. Oh no. Because if you're going to commit to a bit, you've got to really commit. I pulled up Amazon and searched for new father gift basket. 20 minutes and $89.99 later, I'd ordered a deluxe package that included blue balloons. I was hedging my bets on the gender. Baby lotion, one of those world's best dad mugs that I thought was a particularly nice touch, some baby socks that cost more than my own socks, and a greeting card. The card was the piece de resistance. In my neatest handwriting, I wrote, "From Sabrina and the baby. Can't wait for you to be involved. See you at all the birthdays and holidays. S. Shipping address. His home address, which I found through about 3 minutes of Google stalking and cross-referencing with public records. Delivery time? 3 business days, which meant it would arrive right around the time he'd be processing my message and probably having some very interesting conversations with his lawyer wife. I sat back, ordered Chinese food, and waited for the fireworks to begin. That evening, Sabrina came home around 6:30 with the kind of energy that made me wonder if she'd stopped at Starbucks and ordered whatever drink has the most espresso shots legally allowed. She was practically glowing, radiating this weird combination of excitement and obliviousness that you usually only see in people who just won the lottery or got engaged without realizing their partner is already married to someone else. She floated through the door like she was auditioning for a commercial about prenatal vitamins, all smiles and positive vibes, completely missing the fact that her husband was currently in the bedroom folding his entire sock collection into a suitcase with the kind of precision usually reserved for bomb disposal. "Oh my God, Miles, everything went so great at the appointment," she announced. dropping her purse on the couch with the casual confidence of someone who definitely wasn't about to watch their life fall apart in real time. The doctor says the baby's super strong and healthy. The heartbeat was so clear, and they said all the measurements are perfect. Can you believe we're actually doing this? We're going to be parents. I looked up from the pair of Argyle socks I was folding, a gift from her mother last Christmas that I'd never actually worn because who am I, a golf instructor from 1952? And just stared at her for a second. The audacity, the sheer, unfiltered audacity of this woman to stand there talking about, like she hadn't literally texted me earlier about putting another dude's name on the birth certificate. Like we were still a team. Like she hadn't just tried to commit what Liam had confirmed was, and I quote, a whole buffet of fraud options. Cool, I said, which I was discovering was becoming my default response to everything Sabrina related. Cool. The universal signal for, I have thoughts and feelings about this, but I'm choosing to express exactly none of them right now because I'm too busy executing my exit strategy. I went back to folding. She still didn't notice the suitcase. This woman, who could spot a dish I'd left in the sink from 3 rooms away, who had the supernatural ability to know when I'd eaten fast food by smell alone, who once noticed I'd gotten a haircut before I'd even walked fully through the door. This woman didn't notice that her husband was actively packing his belongings like he was about to enter a witness protection program. She wandered into the kitchen, still talking about baby stuff, something about cribs and color schemes, and whether we should go with a woodland theme or an ocean theme. Like that was our biggest problem right now. I could hear her opening the fridge, probably looking for the sparkling water she'd become obsessed with since finding out she was pregnant. The same sparkling water that cost twice as much as regular water, but tasted like someone whispered fruit at a bottle of carbonation. That's when her phone started ringing. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, each ringtone blaring through the apartment like an alarm system that had just detected an intruder. I paused mid-fold, a t-shirt from my company's softball team suspended in my hands, and waited. This was it. The moment I'd been anticipating ever since I'd hit send on that Facebook message and confirm purchase on that gift basket. Hello, Sabrina answered, and I could hear the confusion in her voice. She didn't recognize the number, probably. Or maybe she did, and was trying to figure out why Jamie would be calling her after all these years of radio silence. What followed was perhaps the most beautiful symphony of chaos I'd ever had the privilege of witnessing. Even from the bedroom, I could hear Jamie's voice coming through her phone speaker, and brother, he was not happy. In fact, not happy was like saying the Titanic had a minor leak. This man was losing his entire mind, and honestly, I respected the energy. What the hell, Sabrina? His voice carried through the apartment like he was performing Shakespeare at maximum volume. My wife thinks I cheated. She's asking me about a baby. Why is my name in a text message about your pregnancy? What kind of insane person does this? I crept closer to the bedroom door, pretending to organize my sock drawer, but really just eavesdropping like my life depended on it. This was better than any Netflix show I'd binged in the last year. This was premium content, and I had front row seats. Jamie, calm down. It's not what it looks like, Sabrina was saying, and her voice had that panicked quality of someone who just realized they'd accidentally replied all to a company email with something deeply inappropriate. I can explain everything. This is all a huge misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Jamie was apparently not interested in calming down. Good for him. You told your husband to put my name on a birth certificate. How is that a misunderstanding? Those are specific words arranged in a specific order that mean a specific thing. I was just thinking out loud. It wasn't a real plan. You texted it. In writing. With words. Sabrina, my wife is a lawyer. Oh, this was getting good. I could practically hear Jamie's blood pressure spiking through the phone. Do you know what lawyers do when they think their husband's cheated? They don't cry. They divide assets. She's already called her firm. Okay, but is it? Sabrina was struggling now, and I could hear her moving around the living room, probably pacing the way she did when she was stressed. Is it actually your baby? Because, is it my baby? Jamie repeated, his voice reaching decibels I didn't think human vocal cords could achieve. Are you seriously asking me that right now? No, Sabrina. It's not my baby. We haven't seen each other in 5 years. I'm married. Happily. Or at least I was until about 20 minutes ago. Well then what's the problem? Sabrina had the nerve to sound defensive, like Jamie was being unreasonable for not wanting to be randomly assigned as the father of a child that wasn't his. The problem is that you— Oh my God, I can't. I'm done. Don't contact me. Don't text me. If I get any more messages, calls, or gift baskets from you, I'm filing a restraining order. My wife's already drafting it. Have a nice life, Sabrina. Hope the insurance was worth it. Click. The sound of him hanging up echoed through the apartment like a gavel coming down in a courtroom. Beautiful. Perfect. Chef's kiss. There was silence for about 5 seconds. 5 glorious seconds where I imagined Sabrina was standing in our living room, phone still pressed to her ear, trying to process what had just happened. Then I heard her footsteps, fast and purposeful, coming toward the bedroom. She burst through the door like a cop executing a warrant, and her eyes immediately went to the suitcase on the bed, the half-empty closet, the pile of my stuff organized into neat categories. I watched her face go through about 17 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, realization, shock, anger, and finally settling on this look that was somewhere between betrayed and impressed. "Did you do this?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Did you tell Jamie? Did you send him that text?" I carefully folded the softball t-shirt and placed it in the suitcase, taking my time, making sure the corners were perfectly aligned. Then I looked up at her, matched her energy, and gave her my best customer service smile, the one that says, "I'm being polite, but I'd rather be literally anywhere else." "Do what?" I asked innocently. "Support the father? I mean, you said it yourself. It's easier this way." I was just trying to help streamline the process. Get everyone on the same page. Facilitate communication between all parties involved. You know, being supportive. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like a fish that had just realized it was in a tank and not the ocean. "You sent him a gift basket?" "Well," I said, zipping up the suitcase with a satisfying sound. "He's going to be a dad, right? That's what you said." Seemed rude not to acknowledge it. The next morning started with the kind of aggressive silence that makes you realize your marriage isn't just dead. It's been dead, buried, and someone's already sold the headstone on Facebook Marketplace. Sabrina had spent the night on the couch, which was her choice because I'd offered to take the couch and she'd told me to go sleep in hell for all I care, which wasn't geographically specific enough for me to actually act on. I'd slept surprisingly well, actually. Turns out the secret to a good night's sleep isn't expensive mattresses or white noise machines. It's the peace of mind that comes from knowing you're doing the right thing, even if that thing is systematically dismantling your spouse's terrible life choices with the precision of a surgeon and the pettiness of a reality TV villain. I was in the kitchen making coffee. Real coffee, not whatever pumpkin spice unicorn tears nonsense Sabrina had been buying, when her phone rang. Again. This woman's phone had been ringing more in the last 12 hours than it had in the entire previous year. She grabbed it off the coffee table where she'd apparently been staring at it like it was a bomb that might explode at any second, which, given the circumstances, wasn't that far off from the truth. "Hello?" she answered, and even from across the apartment I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. The kind of exhaustion that comes from staying up all night trying to figure out how your foolproof plan turned into a dumpster fire that's visible from space. The voice on the other end was female, crisp, professional, and absolutely done with whatever nonsense it was about to address. Even through the phone speaker, you could tell this was a woman who didn't waste time on pleasantries or beating around the bush. This was a woman who billed in 6-minute increments and made junior associates cry during depositions. "Is this Sabrina?" the voice asked, and it had that particular tone that lawyers use when they already know the answer but want to establish it for the record anyway. "Yes, who is this?" "Camille Brooks, Jamie's wife. I believe you two have been having some interesting text conversations about my husband's alleged involvement in your pregnancy." Oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I turned off the coffee maker. This conversation deserved my full attention. I leaned against the kitchen counter, cradling my half-full mug, and prepared to witness what I was pretty sure would be a masterclass in professional verbal destruction. "Look, I can explain," Sabrina started, but Camille cut her off with the efficiency of someone who'd been cutting off people's excuses for a living for the past decade. "No, I don't think you can, actually. But here's what I can explain to you." Camille's voice was calm, measured, and somehow more terrifying than if she'd been yelling. If you put my husband's name on any legal document, birth certificate, insurance claim, medical record, back of a Denny's napkin, I don't care. I will personally ensure that you spend the next several years understanding exactly how the legal system treats fraud. I will make it my hobby, my passion project. I will approach your prosecution with the same enthusiasm that people reserve for training for marathons or learning to make sourdough bread. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. This woman was incredible. She was like if a legal textbook and a flamethrower had a baby, and that baby passed the bar exam with honors. I wasn't actually going to, Sabrina tried again, but Camille was on a roll. You texted your husband about it. That's premeditation. That's evidence. That's me having a very easy time proving intent. Do you know what happens to people who commit paternity fraud? Let me give you a preview. It involves fines, possible jail time, and a criminal record that makes getting any job harder than explaining cryptocurrency to a golden retriever. There was silence on Sabrina's end. The kind of silence that happens when someone realizes they've brought a plastic spoon to a sword fight. Furthermore, Camille continued, and I could practically hear her ticking points off on her fingers. If you contact my husband again, call, text, email, carrier pigeon, smoke signals, telepathy, I will file for a restraining order so fast you'll think the legal system has Amazon Prime. Are we clear? Crystal, Sabrina whispered, and she sounded like a kid who'd just been called to the principal's office and realized they left their excuse note at home. Excellent. Have a wonderful day. I hope your baby is healthy. I hope you figure out your life. I hope you learn that insurance fraud is not a viable financial planning strategy. Click. Sabrina sat there for a moment, phone still pressed to her ear, staring at nothing. Then she looked at me standing in the kitchen doorway with my coffee mug, and I could see her trying to figure out if I was somehow responsible for this too. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. This was just karma doing its thing, and karma apparently had a law degree and a bone to pick. She's so dramatic, Sabrina finally said, which was rich coming from the woman who tried to fake a paternity certificate for insurance purposes. Yeah, I agreed, taking a sip of my coffee. Volcanoes are pretty dramatic too. Still wouldn't recommend poking one with a stick. My phone rang about 20 minutes later, after Sabrina had retreated to the bedroom to think about things, which I assumed meant frantically Google whether lawyers can actually destroy your life just for fun. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway because at this point, what did I have to lose? Is this Miles? The voice was familiar, Camille. She sounded considerably more relaxed than she had during her conversation with Sabrina, like she'd just finished a satisfying workout. That's me, the husband. Or, well, soon-to-be ex-husband if I have anything to say about it. I thought so. I wanted to call and say thank you. She actually sounded sincere, which was nice. My husband came clean last night after he got your message and that gift basket, by the way, which was absolutely inspired. We had a long talk. Well, he talked and I interrogated, but we got to the truth. You probably saved me from 20 years of child support payments for a kid that isn't even his. Happy to help, I said, and I meant it. I figure we men have to unionize somehow. Can't let the paternity fraud industrial complex win. She laughed, which was probably the first genuine laugh I'd heard in 24 hours. I like you. You've got spite, but it's directed appropriately. That's rare. Thanks. I'm trying to make it an art form. Listen, I'm going to give you some advice because I think you deserve it, and also because I'm fundamentally incapable of not giving legal advice. It's like a compulsion at this point. She paused, and I could hear papers shuffling in the background. Get a paternity test. As soon as that baby is born, get a DNA test. Don't sign anything until you have those results. Don't let her guilt you. Don't let her family pressure you. Don't let anyone tell you that wanting proof makes you a bad person. Already on it, I said, because I'd actually been Googling DNA testing labs during my lunch break yesterday. Got 3 different labs bookmarked. Had a whole tab situation going. Good man. Also, document everything. Every text, every conversation, every threat, every manipulation attempt. Screenshot it, save it, back it up in 3 different places. If this goes to court, and honestly, given what you've told me about her personality, it probably will, you're going to want evidence that you were the sane one. Way ahead of you. I've got a folder on my desktop that's just labeled evidence of stupidity. It's getting pretty full. Camille laughed again. I really do like you. Look, If you need any recommendations for lawyers when the time comes, I know people. Good people. People who will absolutely demolish someone who tries to commit fraud and then plays victim. I might take you up on that. Please do. And Miles, don't let her make you feel bad for protecting yourself. You're not abandoning a pregnant woman. You're extracting yourself from a criminal conspiracy before it ruins your life. There's a difference. We talked for a few more minutes about logistics and legal strategies and the general insanity of people who think they can outsmart the system by texting their plans to the people they're trying to scam. By the time we hung up, I felt better than I had in days. Validated. Like maybe I wasn't crazy for thinking this whole situation was absolutely bonkers. I looked down at my phone and saw I'd been scrolling through DNA testing websites while we talked. The reviews were pretty reassuring. 99% accuracy, results in 3 to 5 business days. FSA eligible if you wanted to pretend this was a normal medical expense. I added one to my Amazon cart, right below the book about co-parenting I'd ordered earlier. Spite, preparation, documentation, the holy trinity of modern divorce. 2 days after the great phone call meltdown, Sabrina announced she was going to stay at her mother's house for a few days to clear her head and get some space, which was exactly what I'd been hoping she'd say since this whole disaster started. She said it like she was doing me some kind of favor, like I was supposed to beg her to stay or promise to work things out or whatever it is that normal husbands do when their marriages are circling the drain. Instead, I responded with my new favorite word, okay, and watched her pack a bag with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for watching paint dry or attending a timeshare presentation. The moment her car pulled out of the parking lot, I transformed into a moving machine powered by spite and the kind of focused determination that people usually only achieve when they're trying to beat a video game boss that's killed them 17 times. I called Marcus, a buddy from work who owned a pickup truck and had once told me that he'd help me move anytime. No questions asked. Turns out, no questions asked was a lie because he had approximately 47 questions. But he showed up anyway with his truck and his younger brother Tyler, who was home from college and apparently needed beer money. So let me get this straight. Marcus said as we started loading boxes into his truck bed. Your wife tried to put her ex's name on a birth certificate for insurance fraud. You sent the ex a gift basket to expose her plan. His lawyer wife threatened to prosecute. And now you're moving out while your wife is at her mom's house. That's the gist of it, yeah. Bro, your life is like if a telenovela and a legal thriller had a baby. Tyler was loading my desktop computer into the truck with the kind of careful reverence that suggested he understood the sacred bond between a man and his gaming setup. This is wild. Can I tell people about this? My roommates would lose their minds. Tell whoever you want, man. At this point, this story is practically public domain. We worked fast, loading everything I cared about into the truck. Clothes, electronics, my collection of vintage concert posters that Sabrina had always hated, the coffee maker I'd bought before we got married, my books, my gaming chair that had cost more than I wanted to admit, and approximately 47 different phone chargers that had accumulated over the years like some kind of electronic moss. I left the furniture because most of it was hers anyway, or it was stuff we'd bought together, and I didn't want to deal with the hassle of dividing a couch like it was a disputed territory in a peace treaty. The best part? I'd already found a new place. A one-bedroom apartment about 15 minutes away, smaller than what we had but cheaper, and most importantly, it didn't come with the emotional baggage of a wife who thought insurance fraud was a valid life strategy. The landlord was this cool older guy named Mr. Chin, who'd seen me for exactly 10 minutes before deciding I seemed stable enough and accepting my deposit. I didn't have the heart to tell him that the bar for stability in my life right now was so low it was basically a tripping hazard in hell. Before we left, I did one final walkthrough of the apartment, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. That's when I decided to leave Sabrina a little note, because I'm nothing if not thorough when it comes to burning bridges with the appropriate amount of professionalism. I found a notepad in the kitchen drawer, one of those magnetic ones that Sabrina used for grocery lists, and wrote in my clearest handwriting, "Lease ends in 30 days. Mrs. Patel has the notice. Tell Jamie congrats on the insurance plan working out. Also, you might want to check with Camille before you make any more plans involving other people's identities. Miles." I stuck it to the fridge with one of those annoying magnets shaped like a pineapple that said Aloha in swirly letters, a souvenir from a vacation to Hawaii that now felt like it had happened in a different lifetime, to different people who actually liked each other. Marcus and Tyler helped me unload everything at the new place, and I paid them in pizza and the cash I'd been saving in my desk drawer for what I'd originally planned to use as an anniversary gift fund. Joke's on me, I guess. Tyler left with $50 and 3 slices of pepperoni pizza, declaring that this was the best breakup he'd ever been a part of, which was a weird thing to say, but I appreciated the enthusiasm. I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up my new place, and honestly, it felt good. Really good. Like I was finally taking control of a situation that had spiraled into complete chaos. I hung my posters, set up my computer, arranged my books on the shelf I'd bought from IKEA, and only partially assembled incorrectly. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No passive-aggressive comments about leaving dishes in the sink. No arguments about thermostat settings. Just me, my stuff, and the peaceful silence of not having to deal with someone else's felony-adjacent life choices. Sabrina returned to the old apartment that evening. I know this because she called me at 7:43 p.m., and when I answered, the sound that came through the phone was like something you'd hear in a horror movie right before the monster appears. It was a scream, but not a scared scream. More like the sound someone makes when they realize they've been checkmated in a game they didn't know they were playing. "Where is your stuff?" she shrieked, and I had to hold the phone away from my ear to prevent permanent hearing damage. "Where is everything? Your clothes are gone. Your computer is gone. Did we get robbed? Oh my God, did someone break in?" "Not robbed," I said calmly, sitting on my new couch. "Used, but comfortable, bought off Craigslist from a nice lady who was moving to Portland, and enjoying the way my words were about to land. Relocated. You know, like your loyalty relocated to your ex-boyfriend. Except my stuff actually ended up somewhere better." There was a beat of silence. "You moved out? You moved out. Without telling me. You said you needed space. I gave you space. An entire apartment's worth of space, actually. You're welcome. This is illegal. You can't just abandon the lease. You can't just take your stuff and leave. I'm pregnant. And I'm not stupid, Sabrina. The lease is month to month. I gave proper notice, and I took my stuff. My stuff. The stuff I owned before we got married and the stuff I bought with my money. Pretty sure that's legal. Unlike, fraud. I'm calling the police," she screamed. "This is abandonment. This is. Go ahead," I said, and I meant it. "Call them. I'll wait." She hung up on me, which I took as a sign that she was actually going to do it. Sure enough, about 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but the caller ID said it was from the local police department's non-emergency line. "Is this Miles Henderson?" The voice was male, professional, kind of tired, sounding like he'd been dealing with nonsense all day, and mine was just another item on the list. "That's me, officer. This is Officer Rodriguez. We got a call from your wife, or she said she's your wife, claiming you abandoned her while she's pregnant and took all the furniture. I'm just calling to get your side of things before we send someone out." I took a deep breath and launched into the explanation I'd been mentally preparing for exactly this scenario. I told him about the text message, about the attempted paternity fraud, about how I'd given proper notice on the lease, taken only my personal belongings, and left all the shared furniture. I even mentioned Camille's call and her legal assessment of the situation, because having a lawyer on your side, even tangentially, adds credibility to your story. "So let me get this straight," Officer Rodriguez said, and I could hear him typing in the background. "She tried to put another man's name on a birth certificate while married to you, and you have proof of this. Screenshots. Multiple screenshots. Time-stamped. I can email them to you if you need them." There was more typing. Then a long sigh. "Yeah, you're fine. That's actually fraud. Multiple types of fraud. You moving out is probably the smartest thing you could do in this situation. I'll let your wife know that you haven't done anything illegal and that she might want to talk to a lawyer about her own situation." "Thanks, officer. I appreciate it." "No problem. And hey, good luck with everything. Sounds like you're going to need it." After we hung up, I sat there on my slightly used Craigslist couch in my new apartment, and I smiled. Actually smiled, for the first time in what felt like weeks. Officer Rodriguez was going to call Sabrina back and tell her that not only was I not in trouble, but she might want to reconsider her life choices before the law got involved. Somewhere across town, Sabrina was probably losing her mind in an empty apartment with a pineapple magnet mocking her from the fridge. And me? I ordered Chinese food, queued up a movie I'd wanted to watch for months, but Sabrina had said was too violent, and settled in for the best evening I'd had in a very long time. The week following my great escape from the apartment was like living through some kind of psychological warfare campaign. Except instead of trained military operatives, I was dealing with Sabrina's family, a collection of people who'd apparently all gotten together, compared notes, and decided that the best way to handle this situation was to call me individually and try different flavors of guilt until something stuck. It was like they'd formed a committee dedicated to making me feel terrible, except none of them had bothered to actually read the meeting notes about why I'd left in the first place. Spoiler alert. Insurance fraud is generally considered a valid reason to exit a marriage, but apparently Sabrina's family missed that memo. The assault began on Tuesday morning with a call from Diana, Sabrina's mother, a woman who'd always treated me with the kind of polite tolerance you'd give to a stray cat that keeps showing up on your porch. Not quite welcomed, but not quite shooed away either. Diana was a retired elementary school teacher, which meant she had decades of experience perfecting the voice, that special tone that made you feel like you disappointed not just her, but also everyone who'd ever believed in you, your ancestors, and possibly several historical figures who'd fought for your freedom. "Miles, it's Diana," she said when I answered, and I could already hear the judgment dripping through the phone like honey laced with arsenic. "I think we need to have a conversation about your behavior." "Morning, Diana. How are you doing?" I kept my voice pleasant, customer service friendly, the tone you use when you're about to deny someone a refund, but you want to seem sympathetic about it. "How am I doing? How am I doing?" She took a breath that sounded like she was preparing to lecture a classroom of particularly difficult third graders. "Miles, you abandoned my daughter. My pregnant daughter. Do you have any idea how that looks? What kind of man does that?" "The kind who doesn't want to be an accessory to fraud, Diana. Funny how that works. Fraud. This is about a misunderstanding. Sabrina told me all about it. She was confused, emotional. Her hormones are all over the place. You can't just leave a woman when she needs you most." I sat down at my kitchen table, which was really just a folding card table I'd bought at Target because I'd spent most of my furniture budget on the security deposit, and prepared myself for what I knew was going to be an exhausting conversation. "Diana," she texted me, in writing, with full sentences and punctuation, about putting another man's name on a birth certificate for insurance purposes. "That's not hormones. That's premeditated fraud." I checked with a lawyer. Multiple lawyers, actually. They all agreed it was super illegal. "But she's pregnant, Miles. With your child. Don't you care about your family?" "Actually, we don't know if it's my child yet. That's kind of the whole problem. And I do care about family. I care enough not to help someone commit a felony that could get us both arrested and potentially lose custody of a kid. Crazy how caring works sometimes." Diana made a sound like a tea kettle reaching maximum pressure. "You are being absolutely heartless about this." She made a mistake. People make mistakes. Marriage is about forgiveness. Marriage is also about not trying to defraud insurance companies and forge legal documents. But apparently that didn't make it into the vows. "Look, Diana, I appreciate you calling. But unless you're calling to tell me Sabrina's turned herself into the authorities and is seeking professional help, I don't think we have much to discuss." She hung up on me, which I took as a victory. One down, who knows how many more to go. The second wave arrived that afternoon in the form of a series of increasingly aggressive texts from Tasha, Sabrina's younger sister, who'd always had the kind of personality that made you understand why some animals eat their siblings. Tasha was 26, worked in marketing, and had the unique ability to make everything about her while simultaneously judging everyone else's life choices. She'd been married for 6 months to a guy named Brad who sold insurance, which, looking back now, explained a lot about this whole situation. The texts came in rapid-fire succession, each one more self-righteous than the last. "Can't believe you're abandoning Sabrina when she needs you most. Be a man and take responsibility. This is so typical of you. Always running away from problems. What kind of person leaves their pregnant wife? Mom is devastated BTW. Hope you're happy." I stared at my phone, watching the messages pile up like a car crash happening in slow motion, and decided that this one deserved a response. I cracked my knuckles, positioned my thumbs over the keyboard, and typed out what I considered to be a masterpiece of concise communication. "Hi Tasha. Quick question. If Brad tried to put another guy's name on legal documents to commit fraud, Would you stick around? Or would you run so fast you'd break the sound barrier? Also, take responsibility for what exactly? Her crime or her creative writing? Please be specific. Thanks. She started typing. Stopped. Started again. Stopped. I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear about 7 times before she finally sent. That's different. How? Brad would never do that. Exactly. Brad also probably isn't committing fraud. See how that works? Anyway, give him my best. Tell him I said the insurance industry is lucky to have such an ethical representative. She stopped responding after that, but I could tell she'd screenshot our conversation and sent it to the family group chat because my phone immediately started buzzing with a call from Sabrina's dad, Frank. Of all of Sabrina's family members, Frank was the one I'd actually liked. He was a retired electrician, straight-shooter type, the kind of guy who said what he meant and didn't play games. We'd bonded over baseball and the shared experience of being surrounded by women who communicated in subtext and emotional warfare. I'd hoped he might be different, might actually understand why I'd done what I'd done. I was wrong. Son, he said when I answered, and his voice had that disappointed father quality that hits different when it comes from someone you actually respect. Can we talk man to man for a minute? Sure, Frank. What's up? Look, I know Sabrina messed up. I'm not saying she didn't. What she did was stupid, and if I'm being honest, I don't know what the hell she was thinking. He paused, and I could hear him exhaling, probably standing on his back porch with a beer like he did when he needed to think. But she's still my daughter. And that baby, whether you want to believe it or not, that's probably your grandkid in there. Can't you just, I don't know, can't you forgive her? Work it out? Go to counseling or something? This was harder to respond to because Frank wasn't yelling or guilt-tripping in the obvious way Diana and Tasha had. He was just a dad trying to protect his kid, even when his kid had done something indefensible. I got it. I even respected it. But that didn't change the facts. Frank, I appreciate what you're trying to do here. I really do. But let me ask you something. If someone tried to forge your name on a legal document, would you trust them again? Would you want to be legally tied to them for the next 18 years? That's not. Because that's what we're talking about here. She didn't just lie to me. She tried to involve me in fraud. Active fraud. And when I found out, instead of apologizing or trying to make it right, she got mad at me for exposing it. That's not a mistake, Frank. That's a character issue. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear ice clinking in a glass, probably whiskey this time instead of beer. So that's it. You're just done? After 3 years of marriage. After 3 years of marriage and one text message that proved I never really knew who I married. Yeah, I'm done. I'm sorry, Frank. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but I can't set myself on fire to keep Sabrina warm. Especially when she's the one who brought the matches. He sighed, a deep, heavy sound that made me feel like garbage even though I knew I was right. All right, I tried. Can't say I blame you, honestly. If one of my electrician buddies tried to pull something like this, I'd never work with him again. I hoped you'd be different. I hoped she'd be different too, Frank. Guess we're both disappointed. After Frank hung up, I sat there in my apartment for a while, just staring at my phone, waiting to see who'd be next in the guilt parade. By the end of the day, I'd received calls from Sabrina's Aunt Carol, her cousin Jennifer, and a random number that turned out to be someone from her church group who'd heard about the situation and wanted to remind me that Jesus forgave people and maybe I should try it sometime. I told Church Lady that Jesus never had to deal with insurance fraud and suggested she read the fine print on those commandments. By 9 p.m., my phone finally stopped ringing. I'd been called heartless, soulless, cruel, abandoning, typical male, emotionally unavailable, legally confusing, and my personal favorite from Tasha's follow-up text. Probably why millennials have such a bad reputation. I looked at that last one for a long time, then typed back. Pretty sure committing fraud is worse for our generation's reputation than leaving someone who commits fraud, but what do I know? I'm just legally confusing. Then I blocked everyone except Frank, ordered a pizza, and called it a day. Progress, I decided, sometimes looks like a blocked contact list and pepperoni with extra cheese. There's a special kind of person who, when their private manipulation tactics fail, decides the logical next step is to take the show public. These are the people who post vague Facebook statuses like, "Some people really show their true colors," and then act surprised when everyone asks what happened. They're the digital equivalent of someone setting their own house on fire, and then complaining about the smoke. Sabrina, as it turned out, was absolutely one of these people, and when her family's guilt campaign didn't work, she decided to escalate to what I can only describe as social media suicide with extra steps. It was a Thursday evening, and I was at my new apartment doing what I considered to be extremely productive post-divorce activities, specifically, assembling a bookshelf from IKEA while watching YouTube videos about how to properly assemble bookshelves from IKEA, because apparently I needed a video tutorial to understand diagrams that looked like they'd been drawn by someone having a stroke. My phone was on silent, which was a new policy I'd implemented after the great family guilt tour of the previous week, so I didn't see the notifications piling up until I took a break to grab a beer from my fridge. 17 text messages, 9 missed calls, 43 Facebook notifications. Either someone had died, or Sabrina had done something spectacularly stupid. Given the week I'd been having, I was betting on option 2. I opened Facebook, which I'd been avoiding like it was a website that gave your computer viruses just by looking at it, and immediately saw that I'd been tagged in multiple posts. Not just mentioned, tagged. Like people wanted to make absolutely sure I saw whatever digital train wreck was happening. The first notification was from my coworker Jenny, who worked in accounting and had the kind of personality that made her simultaneously the best person to grab drinks with and the worst person to trust with gossip, because she'd absolutely tell everyone, but make it sound so entertaining you couldn't even be mad. Jenny's message was simple. Dude, check Sabrina's Facebook. Bring popcorn. I navigated to Sabrina's profile with the kind of dread usually reserved for opening medical bills or clicking on links your parents send you that definitely contain viruses. And there it was, posted approximately 47 minutes ago, written in that particular style of passive-aggressive martyrdom that makes you understand why aliens haven't contacted us yet. It's amazing how some men can't handle a strong woman who's trying to do what's best for her child. When you're willing to make sacrifices for your baby's future, and your husband abandons you instead of supporting you, really shows who people are. I'm done being silent about this. I deserve better. My baby deserves better. Hashtag single mom strong, hashtag pregnancy journey, hashtag toxic masculinity, hashtag doing what's best. I had to read it 3 times because my brain kept rejecting it like a computer trying to process a command that made no logical sense. This woman who'd tried to commit fraud, who'd attempted to put another man's name on a birth certificate, who'd gotten threatening calls from a lawyer, and had the police politely tell her she was in the wrong. This woman was posting on Facebook about being a victim of toxic masculinity. The audacity, the sheer, unfiltered, weapons-grade audacity. But the best part, the absolute chef's kiss of this entire situation, was the comments section. Because apparently, Sabrina had forgotten that we had mutual friends. A lot of mutual friends. Friends who'd been at our wedding. Friends who knew both sides of the story because, turns out, when you try to commit fraud via text message, word gets around faster than videos of cats falling off tables. The first comment, posted just 2 minutes after her status, was from my buddy Marcus. The same Marcus who'd helped me move and had apparently decided that discretion was for people who weren't this entertained. Didn't you try to name your ex as the dad for insurance? Girl what? 32 likes. 32. The next comment was from someone I didn't even know, a friend of a friend named Ashley who apparently had no filter and a lot of opinions. Wait, is this the woman my friend told me about who tried to commit paternity fraud? Ma'am, this is not the flex you think it is. Then came Sarah, who'd been Sabrina's college roommate and apparently had been waiting years to let loose. Sabrina, I love you, but this ain't it. You literally texted your husband about putting another man's name on legal documents. That's not doing what's best for your baby. That's called insurance fraud. Delete this before your lawyer sees it. More comments piled on, and I watched in real time as Sabrina's attempt at gaining sympathy transformed into a digital execution. People were posting links to articles about paternity fraud. Someone shared a screenshot of the legal code about falsifying birth certificates. One person, bless them, actually tagged the local police department's Facebook page with a, "Is this something you guys should know about?" which was simultaneously hilarious and probably not helping anyone's case. My phone started ringing. It was Derek, my friend from high school who now worked as a paralegal at a different firm than Liam, but had the same obsession with legal drama. "Bro, are you seeing this?" he said without even saying hello. "Your wife just confessed to attempted fraud on Facebook." "On Facebook, Miles?" I'm watching someone's defense case fall apart in real time. This is better than Law and Order. I'm watching it too, I said, genuinely unable to look away from the comments section, which had now devolved into people arguing about whether insurance fraud was worse than abandoning a pregnant woman, with most people landing firmly on the fraud is definitely worse side of the debate. She's going to delete this, right? Derek asked. Please tell me someone told her to delete this. As if on cue, another comment appeared, this time from someone with a profile picture that showed them in a business suit and a bio that said attorney at law. The comment was short, professional, and absolutely devastating. Ma'am, as a lawyer, I strongly advise you to delete this post immediately and consult with legal counsel before posting anything else about this situation. You are creating evidence against yourself. I checked the timestamp on Sabrina's original post. 51 minutes. It had been up for 51 minutes, and in that time, it had received 73 comments, most of them not supportive, and had been shared 16 times. 16 different people thought this was interesting enough to share with their own friend groups. I was trending, not nationally or anything, but in our local social circle, I was apparently the victim of the most entertaining divorce drama of the year. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a screenshot from Jenny, showing a local community Facebook group where someone had shared Sabrina's post with the caption, "Y'all remember that thing about how social media isn't a diary? This is why." The comments on that share were even worse, with people who didn't even know us weighing in with opinions about insurance fraud, the legal system, and whether trying to frame your ex for paternity was technically identity theft. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. I refreshed Sabrina's profile, and the post was gone. Deleted. Vanished into the digital void like it had never existed. Except it had existed, and approximately 40 people had screenshots, including me, because I wasn't stupid enough to not document this absolutely unhinged attempt at playing the victim. The time from post to deletion? 12 minutes. 12 glorious minutes of her learning what happens when you try to win a public opinion battle after attempting to commit fraud. 12 minutes of comments ranging from supportive concern to straight-up roasting her life choices. 12 minutes of her experiencing the internet equivalent of standing in a public square and having people throw very accurate, well-sourced tomatoes at you. My phone rang again. This time, it was a number I recognized. Liam, my paralegal best friend, who'd been watching this drama unfold from the beginning like it was his personal Netflix series. Please tell me you screenshot that post, he said immediately. Obviously. Send it to my lawyer folder. Got the comments too. Good man. Because I guarantee someone's going to try to say you're making all this up, and having her publicly admit to attempting fraud is gold. Legal gold. I'm talking show this to a judge and watch them physically recoil levels of good evidence. She deleted it pretty fast though. Doesn't matter. Screenshots are admissible, especially when 40 people witnessed it. This is actually better than the original text message because now she's shown a pattern of not understanding why what she did was wrong. That's going to be relevant if this goes to custody court. We talked for a few more minutes about the legal implications of live tweeting your own crimes. And then I hung up and went back to my IKEA bookshelf, which suddenly seemed like a much simpler problem to solve than whatever was happening in Sabrina's life. Later that night, I got a text from Marcus. Dude, people are calling her #InsuranceMom on Twitter. Well, not Twitter anymore. X, whatever. But it's trending locally. Your wife is a meme. I looked it up. He wasn't wrong. Someone had created a hashtag, and people were using it to share their own stories about insurance fraud attempts or just general opinions about the situation. It wasn't viral or anything. We're talking maybe 200 tweets. But in our city, in our social circle, Sabrina had become the cautionary tale about what happens when you try to outsmart the system and then complain about it on social media. My favorite tweet, hands down, was from someone with the handle at @legaleagle_wannabe. #InsuranceMom really said, I tried to commit fraud and my husband left me. Woe is me and expected sympathy. Ma'am, this is a Wendy's, not a confession booth, and also you should probably call a lawyer. I screenshot that one too. Not for legal purposes. Just because it was beautiful. 3 months is a weird amount of time when you're waiting for your life to either completely fall apart or somehow reassemble itself into something vaguely functional. It's long enough to get comfortable in your new apartment, short enough that you're still finding random items you forgot to pack, like that one really good spatula or the phone charger that actually works. and just the right length for your soon-to-be ex-wife to alternate between radio silence and sending you passive-aggressive texts about baby furniture she needs help assembling. Spoiler alert, I did not help assemble the baby furniture. I had learned my lesson about enabling poor decision-making, and also I was pretty sure anything I assembled would somehow be used as evidence against me later. During those 3 months, I'd established what I considered to be a pretty solid routine. Work, gym, meal prep on Sundays like I was training for some kind of organized adult Olympics, and absolutely zero communication with Sabrina unless it was through our lawyers or about something legitimately important. Turns out, when you remove the constant drama of someone trying to justify fraud, life gets significantly more peaceful. Who knew? But then, on a rainy Tuesday in early March, because of course it was a Tuesday, the universe has a sense of humor about these things. I got the call I'd been simultaneously dreading and anticipating. Sabrina was in labor. She was at Memorial Hospital, and apparently, despite everything that had happened, I was still listed as her emergency contact because she'd never bothered to change it, which felt very on-brand for her approach to life admin. I drove to the hospital doing exactly the speed limit, which probably tells you everything you need to know about my emotional state. Not speeding with excitement, not crawling with dread, just driving, processing, preparing myself for whatever fresh hell was about to unfold in a labor and delivery ward that definitely didn't pay their staff enough to deal with the kind of drama I was about to bring through their doors. When I got there, Sabrina was already in a delivery room, surrounded by her mother Diana and her sister Tasha, both of whom gave me looks that could have curdled milk from across the room. I nodded at them with the kind of polite acknowledgement you'd give to people you're sharing an elevator with, civil, distant, making it clear that we were all here for the baby and definitely not for reconciliation or family bonding. "You came," Sabrina said, and she sounded genuinely surprised, which was almost insulting. Like, yeah, I was pretty sure the baby was mine, despite her best efforts to make me question literally everything. And I wasn't about to miss the birth of my potential daughter just because her mother had the moral compass of a GPS with a broken screen. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, which was true, but I made sure to position myself near the door, maintaining what my therapist— yeah, I'd started seeing a therapist, shocking no one, called appropriate emotional boundaries. In practical terms, this meant I was close enough to be present, but far enough away that Diana couldn't reach me with the death glare she'd been perfecting since Thanksgiving. The labor took about 6 hours, which I spent mostly in the waiting room doing a combination of stress scrolling through my phone and having increasingly weird conversations with other expectant fathers who assumed I was just nervous about becoming a dad and not, nervous about whether I was actually becoming a dad or just witnessing the birth of someone else's kid in the world's most awkward paternity dispute. There was this one guy, Carlos, who was there for his 3rd kid and apparently took it upon himself to give me fatherhood advice. "First kid?" he asked, sitting down next to me with a coffee that smelled like it had been brewed sometime during the previous administration. "Maybe," I said, which made him laugh until he realized I was serious. "Wait, what?" "Long story. Involves fraud, lawyers, a gift basket, and a Facebook post that got deleted in 12 minutes. "Don't ask." He stared at me for a solid 10 seconds before slowly standing up and moving to a different section of the waiting room. Can't say I blamed him. Finally, a nurse came out and told me it was time, that the baby was coming, and did I want to be in the room? I said yes, because whatever else was happening, I needed to see this baby. I needed to look at her and know, on some gut level, whether she was mine before the science confirmed it. And then there she was. Lila Marie Henderson. Sabrina had at least done me the courtesy of not trying to give her a different last name. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and the kind of tiny, scrunched-up face that all newborns have, like they're already judging you for bringing them into this mess of a world. But here's the thing that got me, the detail that made my heart do this weird, complicated thing where it felt like it was breaking and healing at the same time. She had my dimples. Not Sabrina's. Not Jamie's. I'd done enough Facebook stalking to know what he looked like. Mine. These little indentations on her cheeks that matched the ones I saw in the mirror every morning when I was brushing my teeth and questioning my life choices. I felt about 50% proud and 50% suspicious, which seemed like a reasonable split given the circumstances. Proud because holy crap, that was potentially my daughter, and she was perfect in that weird alien potato way that newborns are perfect. Suspicious because I'd learned over the past few months that my gut feelings about Sabrina's honesty were about as reliable as a chocolate teapot, and dimples alone weren't exactly court-admissible evidence of paternity. The nurse brought Lila over to me, asked if I wanted to hold her. I did. She was warm and tiny and made these little squeaking noises that sounded like a kitten having opinions about being born. And for about 30 seconds, I forgot about everything else, the fraud, the lawyers, the Facebook disaster, all of it. For 30 seconds, it was just me and this tiny human who might be mine. Then the nurse brought over a clipboard with paperwork, and reality came crashing back like a boulder through a windshield. Just need Dad to sign the birth certificate here, she said cheerfully, completely unaware that she'd just activated my fight or flight response. I'm not signing anything until we do a paternity test, I said, loud enough that everyone in the room heard it. Diana gasped like I'd just announced I was joining a cult. Tasha's eyes went wide. Sabrina, still in the hospital bed looking exhausted and honestly kind of wrecked from just pushing a human out of her body, stared at me with this expression of pure disbelief. Are you serious right now? She said, her voice cracking. You're really going to do this? Right now? I just gave birth to your daughter. Maybe my daughter, I corrected, handing Lila back to the nurse with the kind of careful precision you use when handling expensive equipment that doesn't belong to you. We'll know in a few days. Until then, I'm not signing anything. No birth certificate, no acknowledgement of paternity, nothing. Sorry if that seems harsh, but you kind of set this precedent when you tried to put someone else's name on these exact documents. You're heartless. Sabrina was crying now, which made me feel like garbage, but I held firm. This is your daughter. Look at her. She has your dimples. Yeah, she does. And I hope to God she's mine. But hope isn't evidence, Sabrina. And after everything you've pulled, you don't get to be mad at me for wanting proof. Diana stood up like she was about to physically fight me, but the nurse, bless this woman, she deserved a raise, intervened. It's actually not uncommon for fathers to request paternity testing before signing, she said diplomatically. We can arrange for a test before you're discharged. Takes about 2 days for results. Perfect, I said. Let's do that. I left the hospital that night without signing anything, listening to Sabrina call me every name in the book and a few that weren't even in the book, more like in the deleted chapters that publishers deemed too aggressive. Tasha tried to block my exit like a hockey goalie, telling me I was ruining everything and going to regret this forever. Diana just cried, which was somehow worse than the yelling. But I went home, ordered Thai food, and called my lawyer to tell him we'd need those paternity test results rushed. He told me I'd done the right thing. Liam told me I'd done the right thing. My therapist, in our emergency phone session, told me I'd done the right thing. Even Carlos, the guy from the waiting room who I'd terrified earlier, had apparently asked the nurses about me and left a note that said stick to your guns, bro, with his phone number, which was weirdly touching. 2 days felt like 2 years. I went to work, pretended to focus on spreadsheets and emails, checked my phone every 17 seconds for the call from the testing lab. I stress ate an entire pizza by myself on Wednesday night. I reorganized my apartment on Thursday morning at 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. I Googled, what if paternity test is negative, and how to deal with not being a father to a baby you thought was yours, and then immediately cleared my search history because that was too depressing to leave evidence of. Friday afternoon at 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. Testing lab. I answered so fast I almost dropped my phone. Mr. Henderson? This is Jennifer from DNA Solutions Lab. I'm calling with your paternity test results. Hit me. Congratulations. Based on our analysis, you are the biological father. Probability of paternity is 99.99%. I sat down on my couch, the good couch I'd bought after moving out, not the Craigslist one, and felt about 17 different emotions simultaneously. Relief that Lila was mine, that I actually was a father, that those dimples meant what I hoped they meant. Rage that Sabrina had almost robbed me of my daughter for easier insurance, that she'd put me through months of doubt and stress and legal fees. Joy that I had a kid. Terror that I had a kid. Exhaustion from everything that had led to this moment. Thank you, I managed to say. Can you email me those results? Already sent. You should have them now. I checked my email. There it was. Official letterhead, official results, official confirmation that Lila was mine. After I got the paternity results confirming that Lila was mine, I experienced what I can only describe as the emotional equivalent of a roller coaster designed by someone who failed physics. Lots of ups and downs, a few moments where you question your life choices, and a general sense that you might throw up at any second, but you're committed to the ride now, so you might as well see it through. I was a father. Officially, scientifically, legally a father. Which meant I had rights, responsibilities, and according to Sabrina's lawyer, a whole lot of audacity for thinking I deserved to be in my daughter's life after abandoning her mother during her most vulnerable time. Yeah, that's what we were going with. Apparently, Sabrina's legal strategy was to completely ignore the whole insurance fraud situation and focus entirely on the fact that I'd moved out while she was pregnant, painting me as some kind of deadbeat villain in a Lifetime movie about single mothers overcoming adversity. Her lawyer, a woman named Patricia Whitmore, who looked like she exclusively shopped at and Taylor and drank green smoothies that cost more than my car payment, had filed for full custody with supervised visitation for me. Supervised. Like I was some kind of threat to my own daughter because I'd had the audacity to not want to be complicit in fraud. The court date was set for a Thursday in late March, which gave me exactly 3 weeks to prepare my defense with my lawyer, Michael Chun. No relation to my landlord, Mr. Chun, though they'd probably have gotten along great because they both had this calm, unflappable energy that made you feel like everything was going to be fine even when it definitely wasn't. Michael was in his 40s, had been practicing family law for 15 years, and had this way of explaining legal strategy that made it sound like we were planning a heist instead of a custody hearing. Here's the thing, Michael said during one of our prep meetings, spreading documents across his desk like a general planning a military campaign. She's going to paint you as unstable, vindictive, unsupportive. Basically every negative adjective she can think of that doesn't technically constitute slander. But we have something better than adjectives. We have evidence. So much evidence that I had to create a separate folder in my filing system just for your case, and I labeled it evidence of stupidity because you already named it that, and honestly, I couldn't think of anything better. I love this man. If the custody hearing went well, I was absolutely sending him a fruit basket. A legitimate one, not a passive-aggressive one. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best suit, the one I'd bought for a wedding 2 years ago and had only worn twice since because most of my life didn't require looking like I understood compound interest and had a retirement plan. I showed up at the courthouse 30 minutes early because Michael had told me that judges notice punctuality, and also because I'm neurotic about being late to things that could determine the next 18 years of my life. The courtroom looked exactly like you'd expect a family court to look. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look vaguely ill, rows of wooden benches that were designed to be uncomfortable enough to make you want to settle out of court, and a general atmosphere of congratulations. Your personal life is now a matter of public record. Sabrina was already there with Patricia, both of them wearing power suits and expressions that suggested they thought this was going to be an easy win. I sat down next to Michael at our table, and he leaned over to whisper, "Remember, stay calm no matter what they say. Don't react. Don't make faces. Just sit there and look like a responsible father who makes good decisions, which, given the evidence we have, should be pretty easy." "What if I want to make faces, though?" I whispered back. "What if she says something really stupid and my face just does it automatically? Then I'm billing you for the extra therapy I'll need after watching you sabotage your own case." The judge walked in, Honorable Margaret Santos, according to the nameplate, and she had the energy of someone who'd been dealing with people's marital disasters for so long that nothing surprised her anymore. She was probably in her late 50s, had reading glasses on a chain around her neck like a stern librarian, and the kind of expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse in the book and wasn't interested in hearing new ones. "All right," Judge Santos said, settling into her chair and looking over the case file with the enthusiasm of someone reading terms and conditions. "Henderson versus Henderson, custody dispute regarding minor child Lila Marie Henderson, age 6 weeks. Ms. Whitmore, you filed for full custody on behalf of your client. Let's hear why you think the father shouldn't have equal parenting time with his daughter." Patricia stood up, smoothed her suit jacket, and launched into what I can only describe as a performance. "Your Honor, my client Mrs. Henderson has been the primary caregiver for Lila since birth. Mr. Henderson abandoned Mrs. Henderson during her pregnancy, moved out of their shared residence without warning, and has shown a pattern of vindictive behavior designed to hurt his wife rather than support his family. He refused to sign the birth certificate until a paternity test was completed, demonstrating a fundamental lack of trust and commitment to his child. I felt Michael tense next to me, but he stayed quiet. This was her opening statement. We'd get our turn. Furthermore, Patricia continued, warming up to her theme. Mr. Henderson has made no effort to reconcile with Mrs. Henderson or create a stable two-parent household for their daughter. Instead, he has isolated himself, showing an unwillingness to co-parent effectively. We believe that full custody with supervised visitation is in the best interest of the child until Mr. Henderson can demonstrate consistent, supportive behavior. Judge Santos made some notes, her face revealing absolutely nothing. Mr. Chun, your response? Michael stood up, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped about 5 degrees from the sheer cold professionalism radiating off him. He picked up a folder, the one labeled Evidence of Stupidity, and approached the bench. Your Honor, with all due respect to Ms. Whitmore's creative interpretation of events, I'd like to present some context that I believe is relevant to this case. He opened the folder with the kind of dramatic flair that made me understand why he'd gone to law school instead of becoming an actor. Exhibit A, a text message from Mrs. Henderson to Mr. Henderson, sent while she was at a prenatal appointment. He handed a printed screenshot to the judge. I watched Judge Santos's eyes skim the text, and I swear I saw her eyebrows move approximately 1 millimeter upward, which in judge speak probably meant, what the actual hell am I reading? For the record, Michael continued, Mrs. Henderson texted my client informing him that she was pregnant and intended to put her ex-boyfriend's name on the birth certificate because, and I quote, it's easier. This would constitute paternity fraud, insurance fraud, and potentially identity theft, all of which are felonies in this state. Patricia jumped up like someone had set her chair on fire. Objection. My client was experiencing hormonal confusion and didn't mean. Your Honor, Michael interrupted smoothly. Hormones don't compose grammatically correct text messages with specific criminal intent. But I have more. He pulled out another document. Exhibit B, a Facebook post made by Mrs. Henderson in which she publicly admitted to attempting to fraudulently name another man as the father while receiving sympathy for being abandoned. This post was deleted 12 minutes after it was published, but not before it was screenshot by approximately 40 people. He handed over the screenshots, complete with all the comments pointing out that she was confessing to fraud. Judge Santos was reading now with what I could only describe as fascinated horror, like she was watching a true crime documentary and couldn't believe people actually did these things. Exhibit C. Michael was on a roll now, a cease and desist letter from the ex-boyfriend's wife, who happens to be an attorney, threatening legal action if Mrs. Henderson proceeded with her plan. Exhibit D. Police records showing that Mrs. Henderson called law enforcement claiming Mr. Henderson had illegally abandoned the lease, which officers determined was false after Mr. Henderson provided evidence of proper notice and explained the fraud situation. Patricia was looking increasingly panicked, shuffling through papers like she might find a defense hidden somewhere in her briefcase. Sabrina, sitting at their table, had gone pale and was staring at her hands like they might have the answers to how her life had imploded this badly. Your Honor, Michael said, moving in for what I assumed was the closing argument. Mr. Henderson didn't abandon a pregnant woman. He extracted himself from a situation where his spouse was actively attempting to commit multiple felonies and involve him as either an accomplice or a victim. He moved out legally, gave proper notice, took only his personal belongings. He requested a paternity test not out of vindictiveness, but out of reasonable suspicion given that his wife had literally told him she planned to name someone else as the father. That's not abandonment. That's self-preservation. Judge Santos was still reading through the exhibits, and the silence in the courtroom was so complete you could have heard a lawyer's billing timer clicking. Finally, she looked up, removed her reading glasses, and fixed Sabrina with a stare that probably made hardened criminals reconsider their life choices. Mrs. Henderson, you texted your husband that you were going to put another man's name on your child's birth certificate because it was easier. Sabrina's voice came out small and shaky. I wasn't thinking clearly, Your Honor. The pregnancy hormones. Ma'am. Judge Santos's voice had the kind of sharp edge that could cut through excuses like butter. You were typing full sentences, with punctuation, that included a specific plan to commit fraud. Hormones don't typically cause criminal conspiracies, but I didn't actually do it. Because your husband exposed your plan before you could, and because the man you tried to frame has a lawyer wife who threatened to prosecute you. That's not reformation, Mrs. Henderson. That's getting caught. The judge spent another minute reviewing the documents, and I could see Patricia trying to salvage something, anything, from this disaster. But there wasn't much to salvage when your client had basically documented their own attempted crime in writing and then doubled down on social media. Here's my ruling, Judge Santos finally said, and everyone in the courtroom seemed to lean forward simultaneously. Judge Santos gave us joint custody, which honestly felt like a win considering Sabrina's lawyer had been gunning for supervised visitation like I was some kind of criminal. The judge also mandated therapy for Sabrina, court-ordered therapy, the kind you can't skip without consequences, and gave her a warning that made my entire month. One more stunt like this, Mrs. Henderson, and you'll be lucky if you get supervised visitation on alternating Tuesdays. Now it's just me and baby Lila 3 days a week, working toward 50-50 custody once she's older. I built her nursery myself in my apartment, painted it a soft pink that the lady at Home Depot promised would be soothing for infants and adults questioning their life choices. The room is quiet, peaceful, and most importantly, drama-free. It's the complete opposite of her mother's personality, and I consider that a parenting win. Sabrina still tries her manipulation tactics, obviously. Turns out old habits die hard, especially when those habits involve expecting other people to fund your poor financial planning. Last week she texted, "Can you pay my electricity bill? For Lila's sake. She needs a warm place to stay." I Venmo'd her exactly $20 with the note, for Lila's nightlight. That should cover it. She called me pathetic, which I took as a compliment at this point. So I sent another $5 with the memo, for tissues to cry into. She blocked me on Venmo. Totally worth it. The best part of this whole saga? Camille and Jamie sent a card when Lila was born. A real, physical card with a handwritten note that said, "Congratulations on your daughter. Glad we all dodged that hurricane together. Best wishes to you and Lila." P.S. That gift basket was legendary. They included a gift card to Target, which I used to buy diapers because turns out babies go through those things like I go through coffee, constantly, and in concerning quantities. Sometimes I sit in Lila's nursery at 2 a.m. during feeding time, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger while she makes those weird baby noises that sound like she's judging the quality of her formula, and I think about how close I came to missing all of this. How if I'd signed that birth certificate without question, if I'd just gone along with Sabrina's plan because it was easier, I'd be legally tied to fraud and possibly sharing custody with a guy who sells insurance and has a lawyer wife who could destroy me in court. That gift basket I sent Jamie cost $89.99 plus shipping. Considering it saved me from criminal conspiracy charges, exposed fraud, and led to me having a relationship with my daughter on my own terms, still cheaper than therapy, and way more satisfying.